Okay, we're back, and the last episode we were talking about addiction, and we're going to continue our conversation today with more information, more about addiction and you, and we're going to take that into mediation too. So.
Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and particularly thanks for coming back to this episode about addiction, mediation, conflict, and you. I'm Rick.
And I'm Robert.
Excellent. If you want more information, you can contact us at 404-991-0072. Jim, tell them how to contact MARR.
Yeah, the best way to do it is to go on the website, MARR Inc, MARRINC.org. And the phone numbers, there's a toll-free number there, there's a number for our admissions line, and you can also contact a family counselor if you would need to. But yeah, so all the numbers are on the website.
Okay. Jim, thanks for coming back, sticking with us, and having this conversation. Jim is the CEO of MARR, Metro Atlanta Recovery Residences.
That's right.
And we talked a lot about how an addict thinks, which is, and then the conflicts that it can create. And we are definitely interested in mediation. If the addict is not able to follow reason, can mediation work? Is it an option?
Yes and no. How's that for a clear answer? Yeah.
Well, that takes care of that. So.
Come back next week.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, we're done. Yes and no. I think, as you guys and I have talked, one of the principles that you guys believe in is self-determination of your clients.
Right.
As we talked about last time, that ability to reason has been taken away from the addict.
Yeah.
And so the ability to self-determine is not really present either. So from that perspective, it really, mediation would have a difficult time working. However, on the other hand, and we can get more into this later, but mediation can work because you guys are really good at helping clarify messages back and forth. And so a lot of times if the spouse of the person who is addicted can't seem to communicate because the addiction has set up a barrier, I can see that you guys would be able to be very helpful in helping clarify understandings on both sides. So that would be helpful. But the assumption that they can self-determine might not work out real well.
And just to clarify, when we're talking about an addict, we're talking about a non-recovering, an addict who's not in recovery.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because generally, and where would be the biggest problem in mediation is if the person is still using. Now, clearly, if they walk into mediation and they're high, that ain't going to work at all.
No.
Okay, so, but let's say they're not actively using at the moment, but if they are addicted to something, that mechanism is still, that defense is still going to be happening. If they're in recovery, then actually for the first 6 months, even after they stop using, their brain's still trying to, actually for the first year, their brain is still trying to snap back. So there'll be moments where they're fine and moments where, they're struggling with thinking reasonably. But we begin to see the brain starting to heal itself, honestly, after about 6 months.
So this thing can heal.
Oh,
this
yeah.
Pleasure
Yeah, we
path?
can heal. Sometimes if the damage is too great, then it compromises our ability to feel pleasure. That's a term called anhedonia. And
Sounds like a city in Greece.
yeah, right. But it compromises our ability to feel pleasure. That's why you see some people who have used cocaine or meth or doing extreme sports or seeking out thrill kind of things because they want that extra little push, like we talked about last time, of the dopamine and the adrenaline, just to feel something. And that takes a while to heal. It just does.
So we as mediators, we're looking to find a resolution, and that's going to be highly unlikely. But as far as communicators, or the ability to build bridges back and forth between two people, that could be productive
Sure.
even if a resolution's not found.
Right, right. Actually, yeah, a two-party resolution is going to be difficult.
Right, because
in circumstances
whatever this
like
person
that.
says, can I trust them?
Yeah.
The addict.
No.
Yeah. No.
We have, our admissions department has this rule of thumb. When they ask them, how much do you drink, just triple whatever they say.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Huh. Okay. So there is some value, though, of using a mediator, a structured
so, yeah.
context where well, what kind of things would we expect the addict to do then,
Sure.
if we're in a mediation?
I think that what you can expect to see, first of all, is some resistance
To the whole thing?
to the whole thing, number one. Because what the addict is, we talked about last time that the use of drugs and alcohol becomes on the level of survival. Well, they're going to protect what it is they think is ensuring their survival.
The drug.
The drug, for example, right? And so they're going to protect that. They're going to protect that whole process. And so they want to hide from you. You know, mediation in some ways is about kind of clarifying and opening up. Well, that's not what they want to do. So they're going to be very resistant. And one of the ways you'll see this, particularly if you threaten, if their use of drugs is threatened, you're going to see resistance right away. How we see this is it could be straight out aggression or anger, where they would get angry at you. Sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes they just divert. But other times, I think you'll see the denial clearly, kind of clearly manifested in rationalization. Well, yeah, we talked about that last time. Well, yeah, I use, but I use because my job is so stressful.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have a 12-pack at night, I just can't relax.
And I won't be able to do my job.
And I won't be able to do my job. See, so I'm rationalizing the use, or I can minimize it. That's not that bad. Clearly, I'm not, well, yeah, okay, I may take pills, but I'm not using heroin, so it's not that bad. Or I don't drink as much as so-and-so does. My boss drinks a lot more than I do. So that's called minimizing.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could engage in what is projection or blaming. And that's where it's your fault. It's your fault I'm drinking. It's the job's fault. It's my wife's fault. It's my husband's fault. It's my kid's fault. It's whoever's fault. I'm blaming somebody else for my addiction, for my using, for my issue. And so you will see these denial mechanisms. It's kind of interesting to watch. You'll see them start to rise up. And so if, as a mediator, you're trying to clarify what one spouse is saying, and then you turn to the other one and you say, well, what do you think? Well, I think that they, instantly that they're pushing the blame back on them. And if they use the phrase, by the way, let me just throw this in, this is a little extra added bonus for you.
Okay.
If they throw in the phrase in any form, yeah, but, everything that follows that but is meaningless.
Huh.
Anytime you hear, yeah, well, yeah, you're right, but now let me, there you know that the denial is present and that they're trying to defend.
What I hear what you're saying, but what's coming up for me is that if you have, as the mediator, you have parties in the room,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know whether or not you have an addict in the room or not.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And I've gone through some sort of awareness raising training about dealing with addicts and
Mm-hmm.
addictions. So my might be my first up is I hear some of the phrases that you're using, yeah,
Mhm.
but, or it's their fault. Then I jump to that I'm dealing with an addict, and I could be so wrong. So
Possibly. But if they use those phrases, they're defending something. It
But
may
I'm
not
not-
be their addiction, but they're defending something
Okay,
if they
but
use those phrases.
addicts and people who are not addicted
Right.
to drugs or alcohol or anything, they use those same
Sure.
phrases.
Perfectly reasonable phrases to
Yeah.
use, except that they are always about denial.
And
Yes,
some-
But
come on now.
and you see here it is right here. Yeah, I hear what you're
come
saying,
on,
but yeah. But you see how that process works. You'll hear that more clearly. You'll hear that rationalization, the minimization, and the projection from an addict more clearly than you would from a person who's not addicted. But when we hear these phrases, we know that there is some defensiveness. There is defensiveness there. Whether it's surrounding their use of drugs and alcohol or whether it's surrounding something else. Perhaps, I'm talking about my mother-in-law or something, and that the spouse is going to defend their mother. They might use phrases like that as well. So I guess my main point is you're right. We can hear that from other people, but it is always surrounding some type of defense. Some type of denial or defense.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so we have to be better observers, better listeners, and really taking in what's being said.
Right.
And that has to run through all of our filters in order to effectively deal with them.
Yes.
And not make assumptions, not jump to
Right,
conclusions
right.
about this person.
Right, and you don't have to, because even if you take things on face value, the truth eventually comes out.
Right.
What you have to understand is that addicts are the best manipulators in the world. They are masters at it.
So they could manipulate this
Right.
mediation, this process.
Yes, it's possible. But what you talked about in terms of listening and just being objective,
Right.
that will kind of negate them trying to manipulate it. If you remain objective, because what are they going to try to do to manipulate? Well, they want to get you on their side. And you guys have some of the best training that there is on how not to take sides.
Right.
And so that's going to come in extremely handy when it comes to working with someone who's addicted.
Okay.
Because the worst thing you can do is start agreeing with
Take their side.
Right, take their side. It's all over then. Interventionists have to do the same thing. They have to remain objective in a situation and make sure that information is communicated well. If they start taking somebody's side, it's all over.
So I know everybody knows what an interventionist is, but what is an interventionist?
Yeah, sure. An interventionist is a specialized type of counselor who can, a family would call them or contract with them to come in and work with their addicted loved one to get them into treatment. And so they set it up in different ways. There's different types of interventions, but usually the interventionist will work with the family first, and then they'll set up a time to meet with the addicted loved one. And the goal is to get them into treatment.
Okay.
Not
Sometimes against their will.
that doesn't work out real well.
Okay.
But
Just checking.
the courts do that.
Ah.
But
there you
an interventionist wouldn't do that.
go. Okay.
Yeah.
Should we take a break? Yeah. I want to thank our sponsors here now to make all this possible. So we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors.
10 years to learn the business. 10 years to make a name. 1 year on your own. It takes time to build a small business, but only 60 days to transform it with email marketing from Constant Contact. Sign up with Constant Contact and get 60 days of free email marketing to generate referrals, connect with clients, and build the business you've always wanted. Constant Contact. Start your 60-day free trial today.
What happens when soldiers come home? Brene Foundation offers hero support to ensure that our heroes abroad can continue to be heroes at home. We link veterans with organizations who are dedicated to guiding the transition from military hero to civilian hero. If you want to find out how you can support our troops at home, please contact the Brene Foundation or visit brene.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We have Jim Seckman here, CEO of MARR, and we're talking about addiction in a family context and how mediation might be able to help. So we've already talked about how hard it might be, but we could build bridges of communication. If I am the loved one and I've asked for this mediation and the addict has agreed, what should I be focusing on? If I have an asset here of a mediator,
Right.
don't ruin this situation, this opportunity. What should I focus on?
Well, okay, so as the loved one who is trying to communicate with the addict, clearly they haven't been listening to me. The addict has not been listening to me, right? And so I end up getting very frustrated, and I might end up getting passive aggressive, or I might end up just all kinds of things. The main thing I think that the person needs to focus on is making sure that what I want to say is communicated clearly. So clarify that communication. So if Robert is our mediator and I'm trying to tell you something, then Robert, Robert can help me. I need for Robert to help me clarify what I'm trying to say. Like right now, when I can't seem to get it out, right?
So you're the loved one, and I'm the addict, and Robert's okay.
Yeah. If I'm the loved one, and you're the addict, and Robert is our mediator, then what I should focus on in the mediation process is trying to make sure that what I want to say to you is communicated clearly. Because typically you're not going to listen to me.
I haven't been listening.
You haven't been listening to me.
You're going to talk to me.
And so rather than, and that's a good point, rather than directing it all at you, I'm able to talk to Robert, and Robert can clarify. And then in the process of mediation, you guys will say, now, am I getting that right? And I can say yes or no, whether you are or not. So I think that's the first thing, is to clarify the communication. The second thing is, once what I need to say is communicated clearly, then, and I know you would help me if my emotions started getting a little up, you would help me kind of, okay. The other thing is boundaries. Because see, I've been trying to set boundaries, I haven't been real good at it. I've been trying to say, you can't just stay home and drink all day. I need to do this and that. You're going to be able to help me set boundaries with the addict. And I need to let you help me with that. Rather than just being accusatory, see, a boundary is something I do for myself.
Right.
If I accuse you, you're doing all this and that, what am I doing? I'm just slipping into the same thing that the addict does.
Right.
The same defense mechanism. And so allowing the mediator to help me set boundaries, and then clarifying those boundaries, making sure that both parties understand the boundaries clearly.
So tell me, given what you just said, how would you like to see things done around the house? I mean, what would raise your level of comfort?
There again, you have to be careful, because that boundary that I'm setting is not requiring necessarily them to do something. See, one of the things about boundaries, while I want change in behavior from you, that's not necessarily the point of a boundary. The point of the boundary would be what I'm going to do in response to the behavior. If you come home drunk, I'm not going to fix you dinner just because you expect it. If you come home drunk, I'm not going to show you where the car keys are. Or if you're drinking, I'm not going to drive you somewhere. Boundaries should focus on the person, and this is where I see the mediation process that would really be helpful, in that you could help me focus on what I need to do in response to the addict's behaviors.
If this continues,
then I'm going to do this. If this continues, let's say you're my son, all right, if this behavior continues, you can't come home.
It sounds a little bit like a threat.
It is a threat, but I want you to hear that it is a threat against the addiction, not against the person. But so I guess you could look at it that way, look at it as a threat, but if you're endangering my well-being and the rest of my family's well-being, I can't allow that anymore.
So you have to draw a line somewhere.
So I have to draw the line somewhere. So I guess in some ways it would appear as a threat, and certainly the addict is going to hear it as a threat.
Right.
So that would be a good point where the mediator could say, can we reframe that
Yes.
so it doesn't sound like a threat?
Right.
You see. And so that would help me to clarify what I'm trying to say. Because as the family, as the loved one, I'm going to be saying all kinds of things like that. And so I think for me in the mediation process then, as the loved one, it would really help me to get that kind of clarification. Well, now, that sounds like a threat, just what you said. Well, I guess it is, Well, now, do you really want to threaten them? Because
Right.
that hasn't worked for you very well in the past.
True.
Or what would it be that you need to do for yourself? Now, see, that puts it in a whole different context. And you guys are really good at that.
Yeah.
So, as the loved one, I need to be able to be responsive to the way you're directing me. Because a lot of times, as the loved one, I'm angrier than the addict. And I want you to understand all my anger. But dumping it on you doesn't work out very well.
It hasn't so far.
Hadn't so far.
Right.
And so that's where I see that a mediator could be quite helpful for me in that you could clarify, well, you're feeling really angry, but let's try saying it a different way.
Reframing it.
Yeah, reframing it.
So if we could look at a boundary and even an action plan that we write out as, if now you're the addict and I'm the parent, you can continue the behavior you're doing. I'm not telling you to stop.
Right.
I'm not gonna, you can do whatever you want. Self-determination, I guess. However,
Well, yeah, I guess so.
I have to take care of me.
Right.
And my response to your deciding to continue this is
Whatever.
Whatever.
Let me give you a classic example.
okay.
It's not unusual for parents to pay for like a child's apartment, an adult child's apartment.
Okay.
And so a classic example would be if you continue using, I will no longer pay the rent on your apartment. Really pretty simple. I will no longer pay your car payment. I will no longer pay the tuition for your school because you're failing your classes.
Right.
So I will no longer pay tuition for your school if you continue to drink or use like you're using.
Right. But now, that sounded like a threat.
Yeah.
Robert could
So
frame
how
that.
would that be reframed would be
Yeah.
the mediator question.
Yeah.
But that is what the loved one would
want to see
would
happen.
want to see would want to communicate. Now the hope is, here's where the hope would be that the person would stop using.
Right.
You see,
Once they hear that.
once they hear that. But they haven't before, so why should they now?
Right.
But the other thing is the boundary part of it is you're draining my bank account, and I can't allow that to happen anymore.
I can't keep this up.
I can't keep this up.
Yeah.
And so, there it is.
And there's a reframe.
Well, you've made those statements to the addict in the past, and nothing has happened.
Right.
So you're making this, the statement again.
Well, but this time, what might be different this time is the money's cut off.
If it's a
Because
boundary.
if just by virtue of me doing that little role play, that what I'm saying is I've still been enabling you by paying the money.
Okay, so then, just in a discussion about that, since this has already been said in the past and nothing has happened, so this time you say, well, I can no longer pay your tuition, if you continue to use. Tuition is due on March the 1st, and if you're still using on March the 1st, then I'm not going to pay your tuition. So,
Yes.
Okay.
That's
correct.
a very concrete, specific.
Yeah, very concrete and specific.
You're
yeah.
free to do what you want, but
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
I'm free too to do.
You just can't do it here.
Right.
Kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So-
you have to follow through on it and not do it.
Well, there's the other part of that. Yeah, the loved one really does the family has to follow through. If they're going to set a boundary, they have to follow through, because if you don't follow through with the boundary,
Then the next one isn't going to work either.
it won't work at all.
Well, and if you don't follow through with boundary, it is a threat. It isn't any kind of a
and
commitment.
it becomes an empty threat at
Yes.
that. Yeah, yes.
So actually, we could write some sort of action plan in terms of an agreement. This is what I'm going to do as far as boundaries and
Right.
consequences.
In response to
Right.
your behaviors.
So you could
Yeah.
actually write something up that could be productive.
Yep.
What's
Well, you write it up, and I think you're thinking in terms of writing an agreement.
right? Right.
And at this point, this might not be the time for an agreement, so perhaps just writing it up so you have documentation
Right.
that the person could see, and
So-
here you are, and you have this.
The
It's a
clarities
reminder.
are in writing.
And I like that. You're making it concrete.
Yeah.
By writing it down, you're
Yeah.
making it concrete. And a lot of times that's what a family member needs,
Mm-hmm.
is to make it concrete. Because it's very difficult at times to kind of, what am I trying to say, get a handle on the addict's behavior, because they're very slippery, for lack of a better term. And it's very hard to pin them down on something, so that concrete plan would be a great thing to do.
So if it were written so that they would be reminded, so that could be beneficial to them also.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I hate to sound pessimistic about this,
Uh-huh.
but here's what'll happen,
Yeah.
is they'll test it.
Right.
The addict will test it because they've tested it before, and if I've caved, well, then they'll test it again.
Well, the payment for the semester starting
Right, the tuition, March 1st,
March
right.
the 1st is due by February the 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, if it's not paid on February the 20th, then the addict sees that, and they figure, okay, well, there's still time,
Right.
but they're getting closer to the date when the final date. So that might be a way to reinforce
Yeah.
what's been
Sure.
what's been agreed to.
Sure.
So, okay.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense.
It's
then.
extremely difficult for the families. Let me just say that it's very, very hard for families
To set boundaries?
to set boundaries.
Yeah,
and
I can
hold,
see that.
And hold them.
Hold
Actually,
them.
well,
I was
it might
gonna
be a
say-
threat, yeah, but
It probably wouldn't be that difficult to set the boundaries.
right, you can set all the boundaries you,
know,
want.
You
Yeah,
can do
okay.
that, but then following through,
Holding the
you know,
boundary.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's where the challenge
'Cause
comes in.
this is my child.
Right.
And I have given this child everything I can possibly give them from when they were just little.
Yeah.
Well, having something in writing, concrete, that's
Yeah.
maybe even signed, might be easier to
Yes.
follow. And if nothing else, we've got the clarity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, they want to be heard.
Mhm.
And mediators, certainly, we do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can help them be heard.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what I'm saying isn't exactly what I mean, and you guys are really good at getting down to what I really mean. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we end this for now?
Yeah, I think this has been very informative. I've gotten a lot out of this.
Me too.
It's going to be a little bit of a challenge to really remember all this.
I know,
And
it's
the
a
one
lot,
question that I asked earlier about making the assumption that I might be dealing with a person
Mm-hmm.
who's addicted to drugs, when in fact that's not the case. So I'm going to have to watch me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, and speaking of watching,
Yes. Thank you once again for joining us. And we have one more issue we want to delve into with Jim and pick his brain around. Join us next time. We want to remind you of how to contact us. Our number, if you have any questions from this, is 404-991-0072. Center for Dispute Solutions.